everyone, welcome back to another one of Scott's board game reviews. Last night, I had the opportunity to play with a bunch of friends the game Dragon Brew. This is it. It is by August Games. Yep, August Games, there it is. Plays 2 to 4 players. They project 30 minutes per player. So if you play four players, this is a 2-hour game. And it is really a 2-hour game, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So let's set that aside. Let's go ahead and talk about the game. Hang on a quick second here. Do I have the instructions? Oh, here they are. I want to make sure I got those instructions. Here they are. Dragon Brew, the premise behind Dragon Brew is that it's a medieval fantasy world, to be perfectly honest, and they've abandoned the concept of war and tribes going to war with each other, where countries, shires, whatever you want to call them, brew beer and go into brewing contests, and that's how you determine who's better and all that kind of stuff. Really not important, that level of stuff. But it's a game about brewing beers and trying to win prizes as a result. And it's set in a medieval fantasy. There's magic and all that kind of stuff. So that's the game. It looks, when I looked at the cover, like this. See, here's the cover here. Let's see if we can do that right like that. It reminded me a lot of those kind of not social but light-hearted medieval fantasy games like the Guild series by AEG or Red Dragon Inn with it by Slugfest Games. Kind of had that kind of look to it. It looked like a very light-hearted game. Boy, was I wrong. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, first, let's talk about the rule book. The rule book's always the most important thing. Now, the rule book is like this. You see here, it looks pretty long. It is 23 pages long, which seems long for a lighthearted game, but really 10 pages is all you need. The first 10 pages is all you need. Everything from page 11 forward is addendum material explaining what all the cards are and what all they do. It's kind of in a, here, if you don't know what this card, here's what it does kind of thing. So it has a components thing in the very, very front, which I really, really like. Now, I noticed there were no player reference cards, but don't worry, because when you play the game, you set up kind of a little shield to hide your brewing process, and the inside of the shield, kind of like the Village Crone, is your help sheet, and it works really well. And a lot of people realized that was the best way to do that. So that's the rule book. Components. Let's go through the components real quick. You get a player mat like this. This is just a scoreboard and a place for your trophies. This doesn't do, I mean, it's good, but it doesn't do a whole lot for the game. Mostly you have these little player things that you put your stuff behind, and you have tons and tons of cards. This game comes with probably, oh, my guess would be 300 or 400 cards. It comes with a lot. It also comes with a bunch of tokens, cardboard tokens. Like these are the trophy tokens. And lots of extra Ziploc bags to put them in. So the component quality is good. My only complaint, and I can't call it a complaint, the cards are little tiny cards. And you see here, they're actually relatively easy to read for the most part. They're not that difficult. And the iconography is good on them. I don't like little tiny cards, but I realized as I played the game, there are so many cards to this game that if you played with full-size poker cards, it would be huge. So the little cards work pretty well. I just don't happen to like little cards. But the component quality is good. I had no problems. There were some minor problems with punch-outs. Nothing significant, and certainly not their fault. It's kind of a manufacturing thing where some of the punch-outs didn't come out quite as clean as I'd like. So that's the game components. Artwork. Artwork is fabulous. I like the artwork. It's that classic kind of comedic medieval fantasy kind of stuff with dwarves and elves and all that kind of stuff. So that's the artwork. Now let's talk about the game and what the game is about. So the game is basically that you're going to go out, you've got a brewing area, a set of brewing stuff, and you're going to turn around and collect ingredients. There's two types. There's barrels, which you put one barrel in a recipe, and then you've got ingredients, which are called spells. You combine them together. They have three aspects about them. They have bitterness, weight, and I can't remember what the third one was. There was a third category. You combine them together, you get a value. At the end of the year, everybody goes to the beer contest, hands their stuff in, determines who has the best based upon the judges and their value and what they like out of beers, and gets trophies. And the person, you do this for 3 years, and the person with the highest trophy wins. Now, in each year you do three years. Each year has three phases. The spring phase is where you go out and you buy ingredients. You've got events you can create. You can upgrade your brewery, all that kind of stuff. Then that's the spring phase. The summer phase is where you actually brew your beer, and then the winter phase is and where you got to get judged, and then the winter phase is where you clean everything up and you go to the next round. So when I read the directions, this game looked like a really, really easy, light social game. Looked like no problems at all. But looked like it was going to be easy to play. And I introduced it right after we had finished a very heavy game and we were kind of rolling into the next game. And that may have been a bad timing on my part. But we quickly discovered that this game is really, really a lot heavier and a lot more thinky than it looks like on its cover. It's really good and it's really thinky. I mean, this is a puzzle because you've got the combination of what beers can I make and how do I get the ingredients that I need and the trophies, and the trophies have some weird mechanics in them where so you evaluate them from 1 to 5, and you may not want the first trophy, you want the third trophy that's going to be evaluated. So you may not want the bitterest beer, you may want the third bitterest beer, so you make sure that when things come down that you get the trophy for the highest points. It was kind of an interesting that happened our first round. So uh, really, really thinky, really, really puzzly. There's not much player interaction. There's a couple of special abilities that let you use other player cards and stuff, but in general, it's pretty much build your own engine, generate your own resources, and score your own points kind of game. I really liked the game. I thought it was really interesting. It was a lot of fun. It was very engaging. One of the other people who was playing the game with me said, "I feel like I'm brewing." Now, it's not like I mean, what we mean by this is he feels like he's going through the steps of how would I make a beer. Now, there are a couple of other non-fantasy beer simulations. Beer Empire is the latest one that's sitting on my shelf to be played that are really, really heavy into the mechanics of beer making. But this one gives you that feeling, and it's really exciting and it's really engaging. The only problem I did see with the game is that it felt a little long, and I don't know. The problem is I don't know how to shorten it. It's only 3 years, so you're only playing three real rounds where you're scoring points, and so you don't want to cut it down to two, and you certainly don't want to cut it down to one. But I couldn't see any way to shorten down the rounds. Now I suppose if players got more experienced with the game, it would go faster. Um, but for the style of game that it was, I just felt it was a little bit long. But it's worth it, and that's what's interesting is so we played this last night. We played it. It took us about 2 hours to play, exactly on target for what the game said. And everybody said, "Wow, that was just a lot heavier than I really expected." And I said, "But given the opportunity, would you play it again?" And everybody said, "Absolutely." They said, not at 9:30 at night like we were doing, but certainly, um, particularly as the first game of a night, I think or not maybe not the opening game, but certainly not at the end of the night. And it looks like an end of night game to be perfectly honest. So really good game, good quality components. Rule book is good. The only complaint I had, let me go back to the rule book a little bit. The only complaint I had about the rule book is that the key mechanic, and by the way, this is not the only game that has this problem. The key mechanic here is brewing beer. I would have put that at the very front of the book, saying before we get into anything else, here's the ingredients, here's how they work, here's how you brew beer. And that's where I would have started. I mean, even before setup, I would have said, here's how it works. Because that's such a key component and it's so critical. So that would have been the only change I would have been made to the manual. Other than that, it was understandable. I've read a lot of bad manuals over the last couple of months, to my frustration to say the least. And this one was at least pretty good. Only some minor quibbles. So if you see it out there on the shelves, um, it's not. I mean, it's kind of weird because it looks like it's a Sheriff of Nottingham or a Red Dragon, and it looks that style of game. Um, it is a lot heavier. It is a lot thinkier. It's a lot puzzlier. But if you like heavy, thinky, puzzly games, engine builders, it refers to itself as a worker placement game. It's not, I don't think it really is because you're not sharing spaces for the most part. So I don't think of it as that classic worker placement thing where you're fighting for, I want this space and you want that space and I want this space. It's more of a resource management game, to be perfectly honest. and how do I generate resources. So it's also an engine builder. So that's it. Great game. Definitely buy it, particularly if you like really thinky, heavy, puzzly games. And have a good day.